Hi, I'm Annabel Gray, and I'm going to walk through a feature that we are currently working on for code review. Just for a little bit of background, the problem that we're trying to solve is the same problem that attention requests was solving. And I'm not going to go too far into what attention request was, but as most of you know, we're going in a slightly different direction now. So the problem is that merge request reviewers allow users to explicitly ask people for a review. And authors do too. I don't know why that says reviewers. But once that user has finished the review, there's no clear signal to the author of the merge request or additional reviewers what the status is. What do we need more reviewers? Did those reviewers approve it? If they didn't approve it, what does that mean? Are they like officially requesting changes, or do they just forget? It was very hard to kind of figure out. It is currently very hard to figure out what the merge request is needing next. So with attention requests, the idea was kind of like pass the ball to the next person. And we did that by like explicitly requesting someone's attention if you finished your review, or if the author needed review or something like that. In the same kind of way, we're working on a way to increase the functionality of reviews. Right now, they're technically batch comments, which is what they were originally called, because you can write many comments and then add them to a batch and then submit that batch all at once. And then that user, that original author, will get, one notification saying this person has reviewed your merge request. So just to show like an example merge request, here's the approval widget, and it shows you many things. I'm the author, so I can't approve this, but this list I find kind of confusing, and it's not necessarily clear to me what this merge request needs from this group. It does say it requires one approval, but it's not exactly clear, especially because it says optional here, but also, one of these eligible users. But when you're actually creating the merge request, you see approval rules right below reviewers, but they're actually not connected. Approval rules or approvers can be separate than reviewers. In fact, they often are. This doesn't make it clear. And then here it says code owner approval is required, but as we just saw, it isn't required. Anyway, it's a little bit confusing. And I was thinking if we could kind of group all of these things together with code review rounds, maybe we could solve this problem. So the current status of this is okay. So at the moment, this is what I'm envisioning in a very lo-fi form. This would be the merge request, and then there's the approve button and all the other stuff, but I'm just focusing on the approve button right now. There's no way to expand to see eligible approvers. There's nothing really other than, hey, you need to approve this. I was thinking we could add those approvers, those eligible approvers, into the sidebar. So instead of seeing just the reviewers, it would take those code owner approvers and rule approvers and put them, kind of auto-populate them all right here. So when you are the author, you know exactly who needs to approve because you've already set it up in your project. And then when you select one of these, it shows you only the people that match that specific role or code owner approval rule. I've also added this idea of like the merge request status. It's not necessarily a badge, but it kind of helps get an immediate overview of what the merge request is showing. So in this case, the author hasn't done anything yet. They've created the merge request. They have not assigned any reviewers, so it just says waiting for author. That's not very good status, but it kind of explains what I'm trying to work on here. The other thing that we had feedback from attention requests was that when people's attention was requested, they weren't sure why and what specifically they were supposed to be doing. So in this case, once you select your reviewer, we might show some sort of view where you can post your comment with your reviewer. So we see this a lot at GitLab. People are like, hey, user, can you please review the front end here? I'm not so sure about these specific files. And actually, that's a good segue because I forgot to say something anyway. So I'm sorry that this is such a scattered presentation, but some feedback that I saw that came up in some past research also is when you're like a third or fourth or some subsequent reviewer, you see, that's not a good example. You see that here there's one person assigned as a reviewer, but you actually look at the approvals and you see 3 different people. It's up to you to figure out, you know, which one performed which role. It's unclear from this. And at least in the GitLab workflow, we unassign ourselves as soon as we review, simply to get rid of this badge, I assume, because it says 2, but I don't actually have an action to take here. These are both assigned to me because I'm the author of both of them, but it still shows that 2, like I'm supposed to be doing something with those. So in this design, so yeah, once the author assigns these roles to each reviewer, they'll submit their review request and the sidebar will be updated with all of those people that they requested. And in some way, it would show what roles they're performing. So perhaps that these are the code owners, maybe these top 3 are code owners that are required, and then this one is an approval rule that's also required. So they've fulfilled all of those sections, and then they've also added this optional person who, let's just say, is, well, I don't know, they're tagged as optional. And then the merge request status changes to in review. In this concept, this merge request status isn't editable, but it is automatic based on the conditions of the merge request. So in this case, since the author has assigned every single reviewer, then it changes automatically to in review. If you are one of these people and you receive your to-do or notification that says, hey, this person has requested your review, when you arrive at that merge request, there's going to be an alert at the top that says, this person has requested a whatever review from you. Maybe there's more information, maybe the comment that they added could show up here. Then there's this begin review button that I'm not sure what it'll do yet. And then the person will do their review. And I like the reviews right now that when you submit it, it's just a batch comment, like I said. So it just submits, like, let's say 6 different comments on the overview page. I think it might make more sense and be easier to navigate if we grouped everything to do with that review in one entry in the activity view. So in this case, the author requested a backend review. They posted a comment when they made that request. Then the reviewer reviews it. They have several comments and they all show up here, and maybe you can expand it and collapse it. In this example, the front end review was approved. They left a comment and it's done. So the sidebar might look something like this. Front end was approved. The backend reviewer did not approve it. So the only option here is to re-request review. And then these 3 haven't reviewed it yet. We've received feedback from many people, and some competitors do this as well. They have the approval. You can approve it, you can comment, or you can request changes. Right now, I'm looking at only having 2 options. So either you approve it or you don't. And if you review it and you don't approve it, then it's kind of understood that that person has requested changes. So perhaps we don't need to have that explicit, hey, you need to change this before we can merge, because it kind of puts a blocker on it. It's sort of, I don't want to say rude. It's just an awkward kind of interaction. I've seen a lot of teams not use that feature on competitors' products. They'll just do the comment because it feels a little harsh or weird or something to say request changes. So for now, I'm just operating under approval or non-approval. It's still under review because these 3 people haven't reviewed it yet. Once everyone has reviewed it, then it says changes requested, but that's just because these 2 did not explicitly approve it. Once everyone's approved it, it says approved, and the author will know what to do. And I haven't added this in the design, but ideally the top, this merge request badge, it would only show a badge if you are doing something. So if someone has assigned it to you for review, it would show that badge. Once you submit your review, that badge would go away. The author would then receive that badge notification. And so it would be more actionable, and you would only act if that badge showed that you had the notification. And then I have the states here for different statuses and different reviewer options, but I think I kind of already went through that. And then one other small change is maybe we could add filtering in the activity view just because it's incredibly cluttered right now. So in this example, you can have all activity, or you can just look at your reviews. And then the history would be all that stuff with, so-and-so added a label and that. And then this is GitLab specific because we have so many bots. So we could kind of put them all under there, but this isn't finalized. None of this is finalized. And I would really love any feedback now or later if you would like to think about it or look at the designs, or really any feedback is welcome before I do the next version of this concept. And that's it.
Hey, Yana, you have a comment?
Yes, I'll try not to end the call this time. It's a comment / question, Annabelle. It's really nice seeing these prototypes, let's say, coming to life because we have introduced the concept of deployment approvals in the release stage recently. I would say like 3 milestones ago. And then one of the steps that we still haven't figured out is, how to connect the notification flow and how to communicate, how to get people to communicate that a manual deployment is waiting for approval and how that was approved and rejected. We have introduced like the MVC, but then a lot of what I'm seeing here seems like the next step from us as well, right? So think of, for example, the release manager getting the okay go from, I don't know, from security, from people that are just involved in the deployment process to make sure that the code is production ready. So it's really nice seeing how the insights from attention requests can be used also in the merge request. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to collaborate on this one. And yeah, Emily, I'm not sure if Emily's here. I cannot see from my iPhone. But I think that's one of the next steps for her in the release team. So just wanted to voice that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really good to know. Just out of curiosity, when you talk about rejecting a manual deployment, how does that look? Is there a button that says reject deployment?
Yeah, so right now the user can go to the environments page, and then if the deployment is it's pending approval, right? You can approve, of course, and write a comment, and then that deployment will run, and then it will run that pipeline for production. And if you reject, what happens is that the pipeline just won't run; it's canceled. But that's specifically for protected environments. And then you can set the rules similar to what we do today for merge requests. So a lot of the UI and the interaction was based on the current flow for merge request approvals.
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks for that context. If you want to drop like a link or something like that, or post it in Slack or something, I'd love to see that too, or whatever you're working on.
I'll find the epic and then the issues here.
Pedro, do you want to voice your comment?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think, and this was something that I also brought up, I think, in the last UX Weekly about, just to-dos and notifications in general. And this seems like a theme that is emerging and gaining even more traction than before, as now we're having different areas of the product that want to notify and talk with different personas at different moments. And there isn't a good way to do that because we don't have a notification center, for example. This is also applicable, and one example is the security engineers that want to be notified when certain number or recent vulnerabilities appear in their projects. And how do we surface that in the product without having to get those people to visit the vulnerability dashboard or something like that. So yeah, I'm just adding a bit of more context, not a solution, but just that I'm seeing that this is emerging, and yeah, we need to work on it. Jackie? Or read only? Okay. Can move on if no one else has any comments.
Sorry, y'all. I added that read only. I didn't want to just derail the conversation so y'all can read it. And also I just got a call that I have to take. So
Nick?
Yeah, I really like this concept. I think when I first started using merge requests like a couple months ago, I was always thrown by this, like, wait, I remove myself. I like seeing the check. I like the staticness of it, which I think this would get to. I was curious if you thought about like a workflow where, like, you know, UX approves before front end or vice versa, or, you know, the maintainer, like I'll have people today be like, hey, once you're done, can you assign this to the maintainer or something like that? Like, is there a way that could actually, it seems like this could actually probably pull that in, but just curious if that's something you're thinking about as well.
It's really tricky sometimes designing flows like this when GitLab uses the product in such a specific way. And I haven't actually seen other teams in any external research I've done do this reviewer maintainer role. I've seen a lot of teams be like, okay, you need to have 2 backend approvals to, not even that actually. Some people just have like, you know, you need to have 3 approvals, and then they might have those required code owner approvals, which essentially function as backend, front end, and everything like that. I think automatically assigning it to someone else after approval is an interesting feature enhancement. And then as far as the ordering goes, it might just be kind of up to the team to figure out. But yeah, I see what you mean. Maybe you only want to assign UX at first and then have them look at it. So yeah, there's still a lot of things to be ironed out here. And then there's always that like, hey, what if the same group is assigned to multiple required code owner rules? Do we show that over and over? Can we be smarter about it? There's a lot of edge cases. What if people don't use, but like the GitLab project doesn't have required code owner rules either. So in this case, we wouldn't even be able to use the feature that I just showed you. Basically, it would show just one approval required and it wouldn't say anything else. So got to figure out, you know, how we can maybe bring it down to the free tier, and also just figure out how to make it useful for more people or more teams.
Got it. Thank you. Justin?
Yeah, my piggyback question was just, do you have an idea of what the golden path or workflow would be based on the feature that you've currently designed?
Yeah, I think kind of what I showed, like ideally this would prompt people to maybe start using required approvals and maybe even enable them in the GitLab project to see what would happen. We're in a, I don't want to say we're torn, but we don't want to block merge requests based on specific people. That's from what I understand, at least in the GitLab project. So I don't know if it's something that we could necessarily do, but I haven't thought that much about that yet.
Cool. Gina?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, well, one, I really love the exploration that you're doing, Annabelle. It like relates immediately to the situation I was in, where I was trying to figure out if an MR had been reviewed by UX, and because we remove ourselves from the reviewers, I couldn't tell. And I also didn't know that we even showed like who had reviewed the MR, so I didn't look there. And there was not a comment left either. So anyways, I think like the way that you showed leaving the reviewers in the side panel with their kind of like type of reviewer that they were would solve that problem and help me in that case. I was wondering though, and maybe I didn't understand this from your design, were you saying that there would be like designated reviewers for each back end, front end, like each type, or could you assign your own reviewer outside of those types, if that makes sense?
The types were based on the project settings. So if the project settings said that you needed to have these rules approved, they would show up in the sidebar. And then I added like an optional one. So if you also said, oh, I know this person has way more context into these files, maybe you could just add them as an optional approver, and it wouldn't count necessarily, but it would be a signal basically to everyone else reviewing that says, hey, this person also needs to review it.
Okay, yeah, that answers my question. Cool.
Becca's got a read only. Camelia?
Yeah, just remember something that's like either I work on it or use it. There were kind of partial approval concept. I'm not sure is it still the case. Like I'm being assigned to as 2 roles to review one merge request that I approve one, but I still need to approve another one. I'm not sure if this is edge case or is like different feature. Just to measure, maybe need to consider that.
I remember exactly the feature you're talking about, and I don't think it's an edge case. It's something that I didn't even put in these designs because it's very complicated. And that was the like, yeah, partial approval as in I'm approving this rule, but I'm not approving the whole merge request. Was that what it was?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. That's something I haven't put into these designs, but that issue has been rethought about in terms of like, hey, if I push a change that affects only this code owner approved file, should we only reset that file? Should we reset everything but the code owner approved file? So I think that issue, it's not separate. I haven't thought about it yet because it's so complicated, but it's something that we have been discussing once again because it's come up again, and there's definitely a use case for it. It's just really, it's tricky, but no, I don't have it
Yeah,
here.
I understand. When you talk about that, it already sounds complicated.
Yeah.
I think I have a next one is like the not like the email will be considered, because I think that's like maybe something I can easily fix each time I see the email notification that I need to approve something. Like they have like a green message is not really clear, and I think what you changed is more clear. Like maybe it should be like change it together with the email like message or the template of the email.
That's a good point too, and that's something I haven't considered yet. And hopefully when we batch everything together in this one review object, the emails we'll need to consider those too, because it's going to change everything. But yeah, I hope that it will be clearer what's happening in the email notifications. I don't have those turned on, so I'm not sure, but I definitely need to look into that too.
Thank you.
I have the next one. Considering that the answer you've given to Nick's question about how we work differently than our users and that sort of thing, is there maybe an opportunity here to teach a best practices sort of thing?
I don't necessarily know that we do have the best practices, so I think it's
Maybe
definitely one way. We work in such a very specific way that seems to work pretty well for GitLab, but I've seen ongoing issues with, kind of forcing all senior engineers to become maintainers. Sometimes they don't want to be maintainers. And I saw a comment about what if we do change our workflow to be, instead of reviewer maintainer, it's just 2 approvals. So 2 approvals per role. This flow would potentially work for that. I'd have to think a bit more about it, but I've seen many teams using a workflow where they get their approvals and then they merge it themselves as well. And that seems to be pretty common. The author just merges their own merge request after they get the required approvals. I don't know necessarily what that's solving that ours isn't solving, but it is interesting to consider so many different workflows and make sure that this design will work for hopefully as many as possible, and not just GitLab and not just everyone but GitLab. But yeah, we'll have to add to our documentation, because even our current workflow where we unassign ourselves from the sidebar, I don't think, I know not everyone does that. So there is already that sort of disconnect where people do want to see themselves remain in the sidebar, but that means that comes at a cost. That means that they have to keep that little badge in the top nav. They'll have that badge forever until that merge request is merged or closed.
which makes it feel like that's a bug as opposed to a feature. All right, cool. Thank you. Pedro.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this. I already know everything that you shared, but that last part, or in the middle, I guess, that you mentioned about the merge requests count in the global header, that was a challenge with the attention requests that we thought would be trivial in a way that, you know, the behavior that you explained, which would be very similar or equal to what we were planning with attention requests, it ended up creating a bunch of different challenges for us to solve. And I linked there to a list of that explains those challenges briefly. And, you know, two examples that we, or in this case, I didn't consider at the time was when you don't have anything on your court, right? So you send out your requests for reviews to other people, and you've reviewed other people's merge requests. That count appearing as 0 or not appearing at all may give the false impression that you don't have anything to do, which is an interesting, interpretation of the count. And then also perhaps more interesting to solve is the inconsistency with the other counts in the header, especially the issues where you stay assigned to an issue and that count always reflects the number of issues that you're assigned to. And this potential new behavior, and I know that this is all fresh on your mind, would change the merge requests count to something else that is dynamic based on those review rounds. But anyway, yeah, I think I hope we can find a way through that, and that we deliver something like you were explaining that represents what you need to do now instead of everything that you're always assigned to. But it's an interesting challenge to solve.
Yeah, and that's, I added to the issue, like my third round of these designs is going to focus on the top nav because I haven't done it yet. And I just got some more feedback from a contributor who was missing attention requests because they wanted that top nav section back. So I need to focus on that to make sure that the whole thing works together. The difference between the badges is it's already different. Like the to-dos is, that dynamic, look at it now. It's supposed to be at least look at it now because these are the things you need to work on, as opposed to the issues, which is just here's everything you're assigned to, and it's almost meaningless at GitLab. Maybe at other companies, it's more meaningful. Maybe when they get assigned an issue, they know like, oh, I need to fix that right now. The merge request count in my head will hopefully mean exactly what you said. If it's 0, then you don't have anything to do. Ideally, the assignee section won't even be there and perhaps removed altogether. Just a fun idea. But if there's a badge there, that means you have something to do, and that might mean that you need to review it, or that might mean that someone has reviewed it and not approved it. So you'll get that badge back because there's something you need to do. But I need to go through those designs.
Yeah, for sure. We'll keep chatting about that. Thanks, Annabel.
Awesome. So I guess my follow-up would be, what is your next steps? What are your next steps?
The designs for the top nav will be the next one. And then I've been creating these designs and then recording a video and posting them in various channels and an issue to hopefully get as much feedback as possible. Once I get to a decent space, so I'll do the top nav. I also need to consider the things I mentioned, like edge cases, the people who aren't using required approvals, see how we can make this feature more functional for more people. And once that's in a good spot, more videos, more feedback until I can get to a well-rounded area that I can start actually doing solution validation on some of these ideas. Because the problem is definitely a problem to be solved. We definitely know that's been validated. But the solution, this is a solution to the same problem that attention requests was solving. And so we're going to need to do the same kind of validation.
Cool. Anyone have anything else? Any other questions, comments? Christy Stair coming in.
Thanks for all of the feedback and questions, by the way. This has been awesome. This is exactly what I was hoping to get because I need more feedback.
Cool. Thank you, Annabelle.